Welcome back to Discovering Life After 50 with Yvonne, episode 12. So, what am I talking about today? I thought I would actually just touch on losing your parents when you're young. That happened to me when I was 14. My parents were killed in a car crash when I was 14. My brother was 12 and my sister was 6. And it was the most horrendous thing to happen to a child. And I'm 59 this year, so it was a long time ago. But that memory, that feeling, it never ever goes away. Now, back in those days, because you're going back, 45 years ago, there was no such thing as counselling. There was no such thing as aftercare for the children. You were just left to go on with it, basically. And it's the most traumatic thing to happen to a child, is to lose their parents. To lose a parent is one thing. To lose two of them at the same time, it's a whole other ballgame. And I'll never forget the night that happened. It was supposed to be, it was the 11th of December. The 11th of December. Exactly 2 weeks before Christmas. And it's hard to describe as an adult now. It's hard to put into words what that does to a person, what that does to a kid. And obviously I can only speak for myself, I can't speak for my siblings, but from my point of view, I was the oldest of the three. It all of a sudden became the biggest burden to look after my siblings and make sure they were okay. Now, I remember that night that it happened, they phoned the doctor. And the doctor came out and he sat the three of us down. We were like stepping stones, me, my brother, my sister. And he sat us down like stepping stones to explain to us, how to look after each other and look out for each other. And it was my responsibility to, you're the oldest, you have to look out for your brother and sister. And that kind of responsibility, getting that laid on you and that kind of responsibility does leave, it has an impact. It has an impact. And I can absolutely categorically say that it had an impact for the rest of my life and how I behaved and treated my siblings. Now, my sister took gravely ill and never fully recovered. And it became my duty and job, not duty, it wasn't a duty that I didn't want to do it. Of course I did, I love my sister. But because my mum and dad weren't here and I'm the oldest and I'm a female, my brother's not exactly going to be able to do stuff. She was really sick, really sick. She was in the hospital for 6 months. And it's something it's hard to describe. The emotional side of it, not the physical, the emotional side of it when something like that happens. I just felt it was so goddamn unfair for something like that to happen to my wee sister when she'd already had a traumatic experience in her youth, along with my brother and I. It's just no fair. It's no fair. But losing your parents as a child, back then, there was no counselling. We ended up getting split up. My sister and I went to one relative and my brother went to another. No, but we're only 10 minutes along the road for each other. We all went to the same schools and stuff. But it's not the same. It's not the same, but there was no allowance for that back then. There was literally no allowance for that back then. And it leaves scars, and I've no doubt in my mind that it's left scars on them as well. I can't speak for them, I'm only speaking for me. So, from my point of view and my experience, it left a massive void in my life, so deep that it was hard to fill. There was nothing could fill that void, nothing. To lose your parents, but to lose them at Christmas, it felt like the double whammy. It was traumatic to the core. And the days and weeks and months that followed that event were almost as traumatic as the actual event, for reasons that I can't go into on video. There were some things happened. There were events that happened after that, between where we were all going to stay, how long we stayed in the familial home before we had to move into our relatives. So that happened on the 11th of December, and we moved in the January. We were off school for a week. I think we were off school for, it was either a week or 2 weeks, I can't remember. No, it was a week, because it was exactly 2 weeks before Christmas, and we were back at school a week before Christmas. I want to know anyone out there that would send children back to school for a week before Christmas, a week after they had just lost their parents in a car crash. As an adult at 59 or 59 years of age, I find it hard to reconcile that information even now. There's a lot of things that happened then that I find hard to reconcile. I think it was a disgusting, despicable thing to do. I think it was going back to school. I remember going back to school. I remember sitting in it was my home economics class. Mrs. Dale was my teacher. And I remember I was sitting, if I wasn't at I was at the front of the class. Now your tables are all in rows. And I was at the front of the class. I vaguely remember being at the front, but I might have been one or two back. Memory's not as good as it used to be. In fact, it's nowhere near as good as it used to be. And I remember the art teacher walked in, can't remember his name. He walked into the room to speak to Mrs. Dale. And he caught my eye. And he turned and he looked at me and he said, "Look at that face, a face only a mother could love." Well, wow. You could hear a pin drop. You literally could hear a pin drop. Mrs. Dale looked like she was going to take a heart attack. Her face turned crimson. He said what he was saying, and then he about turned and walked out the classroom. She looked at me and she went, "I'm so sorry, Yvonne, I'm so sorry. He obviously doesn't realise who you are." And she ran out the classroom. She came back and she says, "Oh, he's mortified, he's so sorry, he didn't realise who you were." Why were we at school for that to happen in the first place? Why did we get sent back to school for that kind of incident to happen in the first place? A week after my mum and dad died? Can somebody answer that question? It's shocking. Absolutely shocking. And while there's counselling available now, the world is in such a shit state that counselling isn't freely available. You're in waiting lists for a year, 2 years, and there's children up and down the country who find themselves in the most horrendous situation just like that. It's just awful. It's just awful. So this could end up being a 3, 4, 5 parter, because losing your parents as a child is it's not something you can gloss over. It's not something you can impart in 3 or 4 lines or a 10-minute video. All I'm going to tell you is, at 59 nearly, the pain never goes away. Does it lessen with time? Absolutely. Do the memories fade? Absolutely. That's even sadder, because you start thinking that you can't actually remember what your parents look like. And I do. I remember what my parents look like, but my sister obviously is going to have a real problem with that, other than looking at photographs. But to physically remember that at 6 years of age, it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And there was a lot of decisions made for us back then that was wrong. Even then, it was wrong. Even in those days and times, it was wrong. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Let's see what next Sunday brings. Thanks for watching.